Hey, 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 good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Wherever you are on your part of the globe, you are right here with me, the Spirit Phoenix Rising Show. I'm your host, Renee, Lynn. You might be watching us on Moonstruck TV. You might be checking us out just on audio on the A1R Radio Network, Earth's #1 psychic radio network. Well, guys, I'm coming to you. This is an unusual background, right? I mean, I have an unusual background. My guest tonight also has a very unusual background, right? We'll get to that in just a minute. But, Halloween is coming, you guys. Magic is in the air and everywhere. How many of you have got your costumes ready? How many of you are dressing as a witch? How many of you ladies are ready to put on that witch hat? How many of you fellas out there are dressing as a witch? A little non-binary magic, right? Well, for eons, it seems, we have been putting witches together with Halloween season, right? It's the season of the witch, So I thought tonight it might be appropriate, since we're getting closer and closer to Halloween, for me to bring on a little treat, a treat instead of a trick. Tonight we're going to be talking to an actual witch, you guys, a practicing witch who is an author, a scientific researcher. Her new book, written by a witch for witches, and anyone itches to learn more about witches, about the magic, the mystery of witchery. Through her history, or herstory, as we might say, this particular sorceress was initiated not by a coven, but by something a little bit more strange that's literally out of this world. Guys, I want you to welcome with me a woman named for the goddess mother, the author of the newly released book entitled Cosmic Witch, my dear friend, Susan Demeter. Let's bring her on, you guys. Hey.
Hi. Ciao.
Hi. Now, you guys, Susan is coming to us live from Italy. It's very early there. Oh my goodness, what time is it for you?
It's about 5:30 in the morning. So very early or very late, depending upon your perspective.
Right. Exactly.
So don't mind me if I indulge in a little coffee while we're chatting.
It might be a little bit of a pajama party for us, right? It's just like you're waking up about the time I get to bed here in California. I am a night owl. There's another good, witchy kind of magical reference, right? Owls are very cool, very cool. Well, it's interesting too. We're talking about autumn, and it's that beautiful time of year. I love your last name because it makes me think of, the mythology of Persephone and Demeter and the changing of the seasons. It's like you got to be going down to Hades to try to clutch back your daughter.
Well, it really is a special name. And interestingly enough, my eldest daughter, Stephanie, who I nearly named Persephone, was born on the first day of spring. And the mythology obviously was not lost on me, and it wasn't planned that way. So it was like, I have and I think I touch upon that. I do touch upon that in the book a little bit, that my daughter was born on the first day of spring. So I have a even closer sort of, feeling towards Demeter as a goddess. But yeah. So how could I not go that path of the witch with such a name? My sister is named Diana, so that's like having the double powerhouse goddesses as a name. So and she's a super ginger too, so it's like it runs in the family. I think just having that name gives you that sort of energy, for good or bad. It's there. So
right. Wow, I mean, you guys have really claimed and exclaimed your magical relationship in creativity. The best creativity in the world is creating another person, right? I mean, there's a magical act. It's like they're not here, and suddenly you serve as a portal to the planet. So that's extraordinary to me. But, your book, Cosmic Witch, I recently finished it. Do you mind giving a little hold up there? Because I just have my iPad, and it's a little too reflective.
Okay,
there it is.
This is the, I don't know if you can, there
it is. Oh, or bring it in. There you go.
I'm trying to.
You're going the other way.
This way. Yeah.
Mirror magic.
Okay, there's Cosmic Witch.
Yeah.
Paella di Torri. And then there is an Italian in translation as well, which is the witch La Strega.
La Strega. I can't do that R that you
Strega.
roll so beautifully. I've got to
La
learn how to do
Strega.
La Strega. I make it sound like an L, but your book covers so many things, right? In the realm of the history of witchcraft, the misconceptions, the magic, the mythology. I mean, there's the science, the sacred, the profane, sexuality,
Yeah.
gender.
Yeah.
You dive into magic and shamanism. I mean, and even the persecution, the history of the persecution.
Yeah, I think it's important that the history of just even the word witch or strega is honored, because many of these people were persecuted, and they potentially they were not even witches, like as we would consider them in a modern sense, but they were women that were marginalized. They were healers. They might have been women of means that people just didn't like. They were, for whatever reason, these were women that were persecuted under the moniker of witch, and I thought that it would be important to honor them, particularly ones from where I live here now in Bologna, Italy. There were a number of really sort of tragic and gruesome executions that I touch upon the lives of these women, and I thought it would be important to honor them. So there's some history in there about some witches that perhaps and magical people that were perhaps not necessarily as widely known outside of Italy. So I think that might be of interest as well. Yeah.
Wow. So, there are, different types of witches. We hear of forest witches and kitchen witches, etc. And you're calling yourself a cosmic witch. And what I find so fascinating, right, about anybody's story who's a magical person or interested in the paranormal is the idea of the superhero origin tale, right? Yours is full of synchronicity. Could you share with the listeners your paranormal backstory of initiation? Guys, this is so unusual. You rarely hear a story like this.
Yeah, I think that it's rare to hear the stories, but I do think they're out there. I think that maybe a lot of people might be afraid to be sort of ridiculed if they come out with their stories, which is in part why I have come out with my own stories of having experiences with these little beings, that maybe it will encourage other people that have had unusual, highly strange experiences to come forward. And I'm always interested in hearing people's stories, because I'm also a researcher in what I would term exceptional human experience. But as far as I remember, going back in time, when I was little, I had what I assumed at the time was an imaginary friend that I would go on flights of fancy with, which I called the little blue boy. And we would sort of communicate in a telepathic, dreamlike sense, and it was fun and it was wonderful. But it still, even as a memory, is very hazy, sort of like as almost a dreamlike sort of encounter. When I was a little bit older, like a little bit after these memories, I have a very concrete memory of encountering a little person who I knew really shouldn't be there. It was in a brand new home that there was sort of no history of haunting or anything to, but as a child, my mind, the only thing I could kind of put together, I guess because I was watching Scooby-Doo, is this is some sort of a ghost.
If it weren't for those darn kids.
Yeah, I now no longer assume that these beings were ghosts, but these were sort of encounters I had sometimes, and from there it just sort of continued on through my childhood up until my early teens, and I had just assumed that maybe these were sort of things of the imagination. As I got older, I tried to sort of rationalize them a little bit. But then when I was 23, I had an experience with a UFO, which was like a large red pulsating light in the sky that was witnessed as well by my brother-in-law. Yeah. So I knew that
It's a high budget show. You can.
Yeah. So from there, it's because at that point I was an adult. I was fully awake. I was with another person. I wasn't high. I wasn't drinking. I couldn't rationalize these things away. So that really sort of was to me an initiatory experience as an adult into the idea of the other realm, that we are not alone, and that certainly there are many strange things in this cosmos and on this planet, even that we just haven't explained at this point. So it was more or less an invitation to knowing there is something more, and that we are really not alone. So,
yeah. It's interesting. A lot of people, come to psychics because they want the answers. But, as a magical person, I love the questions. I love the mystery. I love the unexplained, And,
yes.
When you tell your backstory, it's just like, also mentioning that you're a researcher and, bringing the science and, a healthy amount of skepticism along with that. It's just like sometimes having the answer isn't nearly as fun as asking the question, right? It's just
exactly. And I don't think there will ever be, at least not within our lifetimes, 100% perfect answer that would satisfy everyone. But for me, it's enough, and within my own practice, which is very eclectic, it's enough for me to understand that the spirits exist and that we are not alone. And the spirits that I work with and the deities that I work with, that is fulfilling enough for me. I don't really need a science to explain it, but I do, in the book, I do explain how scientific parapsychology can help in some ways to understand psychic phenomena, physical phenomena, and even telepathy and things like that. There are, for instance, my husband is an astrophysicist, and he knows a heck of a lot about quantum physics, and he talks about entanglement between people and things. So this is not my area of expertise at all, but there is potentials to understanding how we gain information non-locally, and how some people, perhaps like yourself and myself, are more like an antenna, and we can sort of get this information and maybe pass it on to others. Yes.
Yeah, the broadcast is always there. I mean, here we are, we're talking about radio broadcasts. We're doing one right now, and the signals are always there. Is your antenna ready to receive the information and process it? I mean, it's fascinating. Now, can anybody become a witch? How do you feel about that? Do you feel like this is a lineage thing, or can anyone become a practitioner?
I think that there is a lineage as well. I think that it's easier for people who are hereditary, that are younger women who have had, whose moms have been involved in this sort of thing, or people that perhaps are more open to psychic phenomena. But I think, as I say in the book, I think that anybody who wants to embrace the powerful archetype of the feminine, which is the witch, it's a powerful woman. Sometimes she can be very scary. Sometimes she can be the seductress, the healer, the mother. There's many different sort of facets to the archetype of the witch. I think anyone, no matter gender or genderless, can embrace the witch if they want. I'm a very sort of accepting, open kind of person. So to me, if you're a cosmic witch, or if you're a hereditary witch, or if you're a Wiccan who has been sort of initiated within a coven and has, gone sort of up the ladder, so to speak, to me, it doesn't matter. I love the idea of the witch. I love the witch archetype, and how much a person, how a person defines that really, I think it's really individual. Because if you ask a different witch, they're going to give you different answers. What is
different
witch?
answers?
What's a witch? Right. What is a witch? What is witchcraft? And I'm pretty I'm laid back. Maybe I'm in another life a Californian. I don't know. I love California, by the way.
We both have that the CA thing,
Yeah. So I mean, I would say that yes, I accept it all. I'm a very sort of relaxed sort of person that way.
Right on.
And I discuss it a bit. I discuss a bit the traditions, and I pay a lot of homage to Wicca because, as in modern times, we should, as sort of what's sort of set that in motion for modern women and men as well.
Well, when we talk about Wicca etymologically, isn't that like the wise, if I remember? Isn't that
Yeah.
the way of the wise woman?
Yeah.
Something
The
like that?
wise.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it is definitely related to the craft as we know it in the modern time.
Right on. Well, I always wanted to make a bumper sticker that was a play on that old, like, I guess it was Pillsbury. I was like, nothing says lovin' like something from the Covenant, right? But there are a lot of people who are solitary practitioners as well, So I think there's a lot of mythology and misconceptions out there. Some of people in our listenership are probably, could be teaching us a thing or two. And then there are others who might be really new to this, and it might have been a bit of a forbidden topic. So what do you think is the biggest misconception that you run into about witchcraft and witches in general? What do you think is the biggest, mistelling or misconception?
I would say the idea of the folk horror film that sort of leaks into the idea of what a witch is, and that it's an automatic label as a satanic witch, which is not necessarily the case for most people. I mean, I have no problem with Satanists myself personally. But it's not part of my own sort of practice and my own belief system. Okay, so I think that's the thing, is that because we, especially in North America, there was the satanic panic and all that sort of stuff in the 80s, that people assume that if a person is wearing a pentagram or they're a pentangle, or that they are identifying as a witch, that this automatically means that they're a Satanist, and the worst possible connotations of that word, that they're out doing horror movie type stuff, which just isn't reality. And I think that that's the misconception, that that is sort of the worst sort of thing that can be.
Well, you brought up films. I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite magic film or witch film? Like, I love The Wicker Man. We talk about folk horror movies that, go back a bit. Yeah. What piece of cinematic pleasure do you think is the best witch film? What do you like?
Oh, there's so many that, I mean, there's so obviously, like, I'm kind of really excited. I know that some people aren't, but I'm kind of really excited for the Craft reboot.
We are the weirdos, mister.
We are the weirdos, mister. I love the Craft. I liked Practical Magic. I thought that was a sweet film. I love The Witches of Eastwick. In fact, my sister's cat, she has a black cat that's quite old now, that's Liebchen. So you do get sort of influenced by the pop culture, and I discuss that as well in the book. Is sort of, and then there's the Wicked Witch of the West. I mean, who doesn't love her? She's so delicious in her wickedness.
Yeah, we got to defy gravity here, right? Oh my God. But you talk about culture, etc. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that some of the things that they do is actually practicing magic, right? Like, if your grandmother has ever come to you when you've had a cold and she's given you some crazy recipe, or rub some sort of salve on something, it's like, these are very historic folk magical practices.
Yes.
And living in Europe now, I mean, my goodness, you probably have traveled around and studied, like, I'm interested in, like, the old Germanic studies. I come from Pennsylvania, Dutch country, where we have the history of the hexa and the hex signs and all of that.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the different traditions you've encountered living in Europe?
Well, in Italy, like, folk magic is really, I would say, is probably more broke down by region. I still very much feel the North American, so I feel a little bit, I think it would be better served talking to somebody who is from here, who has lived here and has practiced their life through. There's with Italian witchcraft, because in Italy there are so many it's very different, the different regions, like between southern Italy and northwestern Italy and northeastern Italy. And then, of course, very close to me is the Dolomites and Südtirol, which is Italy, but it's very Germanic. So, I mean, they have Krampus and other things there so it's very varied by region. And each is eclectic in that. So it's a little bit different than, say, in North America, where you have descendants of Italian people who are practicing Stregherina, is very different than what you might have here in Italy itself. So, and I do touch on that a little bit in my book, that depending where you are in Europe, things can be very different, and including in Italy, because the provinces can be so different. They're all wonderful, but they all have their own sort of special magic. Like, for instance, in the South, there's a tradition with the Nonas, who will pass on some of their magic, including the evil eye, to the grandchildren, the granddaughters on Christmas Eve night. So, and this is something that wouldn't be done, say, for instance, in the North, perhaps, but it's something that is a tradition in southern Italy. So
yes, my husband's grandmother, Italian woman, and I have a beautiful little evil eye trinket necklace that I oftentimes wear. I don't have it with me right now, but yeah, that's fascinating. And going through there and in through Turkey, etc., the history of protection. And a lot of time as a psychic, as a light worker, we have people calling up because they're having a run of bad luck and they feel like they've been cursed. Has anyone ever come to you to ask you to break that through spell work? Have you encountered that in your work at all?
No, I haven't. I haven't tried to remove a curse. I have hexed, but I haven't I haven't done that. For the spell work I do, I will do things for family and friends, but I'm not really doing this in a professional sense. It's more based into my spirituality. Right. But I have referred people to others, particularly when I was looking into people that were haunted. More, not so much cursed, but people that were experiencing hauntings that were rather frightening, where when my own methodologies of trying to help them didn't work, I have referred to people who have worked with them more intensively on that.
Wow. Yeah, and with your background as a researcher too, I just think it's really fascinating, as I said, that you do bring a bit of the science to this. Now, you had gotten hired by the government at one point, or what?
Yes, I did. I don't really get into that in the book. It might feature more in Cosmic Witch Volume 2, which will be a lot more like an opening of the recipe book and talk about some of my methodologies and to see if they inspire others. That book is in the works, and I might discuss that a little bit more there. But to make a long story short, yes, I did work for the Canadian military, working on a database on UFO sightings and various military around the world. So I did that for a few years. That's yeah. That may be a bit too much to get into for the
right
show.
Now.
Because we could talk about that for just an hour alone. Yeah.
Right. Well, and one question people ask me, maybe really quick, could you explain to the folks what a Book of Shadows is all about? What's a Book of Shadows?
Basically, this is a notebook of your magical workings. Okay, things that work for you, things that don't work for you. It's like a cookbook. Just think of it, because I'm oversimplifying here, but because of time constraint, just think of it as your magical cookbook.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, you know what? You definitely have a recipe for magical success. You've got it going on. I mean, you've got your new book coming out, that we're going to look forward to in the future if we could only time travel, because I am very curious to see what's there. But guys, again, this is Susan Demeter, a wonderful, wonderful author, researcher, and fabulous cosmic witch. Her book is available where? Amazon?
It's on Amazon. You can also find me and all my links at susandemeter.com. So
DEMETER.
Yes, Susan.com.
.com. Oh,
Yes.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us and bringing a little Halloween magic to the show tonight. I am so super grateful. Again, you guys, my name is Renee Lynn. You can find me at reneelynnspirit.com. This has been the Spirit Phoenix Rising Show, and I am so glad that you could take a little magical broom ride with me before Halloween. I'll be back next week with a little bit more magical talk to share with you. And yeah, that's about it. I think we did it. Thanks, Susan. Thanks to everyone listening.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Catch you next week. Much love.